And welcome to the third webinar in the course of webinars titled Breedplan from Go to Woe, which is run by Southern Beef Technology Services, or SBTS, and Tropical Beef Technology Services, or TBTS. SBTS and TBTS is a joint initiative of 24 beef breed societies, Meat and Livestock Australia, and the Agricultural Business Research Institute, which provides technical support to the beef industry in understanding and uptake of genetic technologies that are available. My name is Philip Mann, and I'm a technical officer with TBTS based in Rockhampton. I will be assisting Andrew Byrne, who is the main presenter of tonight's webinar titled Breedplan the WeightTraits. Andrew is a technical officer with SBTS and is based in Armidale. As mentioned, this is the third webinar in the course of webinars. There is titled the Breedplan from Go to Woe webinar course is being run over 6 weeks. We have already completed the first 2 of those webinars. If you have joined us for those, thank you very much for attendance. If you did miss those, they are available for download off the SBTS and TBTS websites for viewing. Tonight's presentation will be looking at the understanding and recording of information for the WeightTraits, and we have 3 remaining presentations looking at carcass traits, fertility traits and docility, and some of the new EBVs incorporating DNA information into Breedplan, and they'll be run each Monday night starting at 8 o'clock. For those of you who haven't logged into a webinar before, just to let you know what will be happening tonight, Andrew will be bringing up the presentation on your computer screen, and that will come up automatically. You'll be able to hear Andrew talking you through those slides while you can hear, well, hopefully you'll be able to hear us. You won't be able to speak to us directly, but you will be able to submit questions to us by typing in your question in the question field, which is on the right hand side of your screen, and then clicking on send, and we'll do our best to answer your questions if time permits. If your question box should disappear throughout the presentation, if you just click on those double arrows, that'll bring the question box back into view for you to type in your question. Tonight's presentation will hopefully take about 30 minutes. Well, we'll endeavour to answer all your questions. Some of those we are limited by time, and if you need to get a response to some of those questions, you can certainly contact us following the presentation. I'll hand over to Andrew now, who will take away tonight's presentation.
Okay, thank you, Philip, and good evening to everybody again. As Philip said, this is the third webinar that we're running in this course. We'll follow a fairly similar format tonight to what we did last week. So we're going to be discussing the WeightTraits. So first of all, we'll go through and give you an overview of those different WeightTraits. So we'll discuss specifically what the 200-day growth, 400-day weight, 600-day weight, mature cow weight and milk EBVs relate to. We'll then break for some questions about the interpretation of those EBVs, and then focus more throughout the rest of the webinar as to what information you need to record if you're interested in having those EBVs available on your animals. And then also, so just to touch briefly on some of the considerations you need to make when recording that information to ensure you're getting the best quality EBVs that you can. And as Philip touched on in the intro, I'd really encourage you to ask questions as we go along, and as I said, we'll break periodically and try and address most of those. So the first trait that we need to focus on relating to the WeightTraits is the 200-day growth EBV. Like a lot of these weight EBVs, the name pretty well gives away what trait the EBV relates to. Basically 200-day growth, giving us differences between animals in live weight at 200 days of age due to their growth genetics. So obviously when we start to look at the actual 200-day weight of these animals, they're a combination of both their growth genetics plus the maternal contribution of the mother, and we'll discuss that more with the milk EBV, but the 200-day growth EBV is giving us differences due to the growth genetics to 200 days. The EBVs are expressed in kilograms, so that's the units for them, with the higher 200-day EBVs, 200-day growth EBVs, indicating greater growth potential to 6 to 7 months of age. So nothing too complicated about that EBV. Basically, that the higher the EBV, the more growth genetics to 200 days of age. If we move to the second EBV, similar type of EBV, but just at a different age endpoint. So the 400-day weight EBV, again giving us differences between animals, this time in live weight at 400 days of age. Again, the EBV is expressed in kilograms, with higher, more positive EBVs, again indicating greater growth potential to that particular age point, which in this case is around the 13 to the 14 months. The third EBV which we have is the 600-day weight EBV. So very similar to the first two, this time giving us differences in the growth genetics of differences in growth genetics between animals in live weight at 600 days of age, again expressed in kilograms, and this time again higher, more positive EBVs indicating greater genetic potential for growth to 19 to 20 months, or around 600 days. So we've got these three EBVs, if you like, all describing differences in the growth genetics of animals, but just to a different age point, whether that be 200, 400 or 600 days. Now I guess when you're looking at which of those traits is important to you in your selection, it will really depend on which is the age at turn-off that you're trying to sell most of your animals, or importantly probably which is your age that your clients are trying to turn their animals off. And in most cases, I guess that'll be around the 400 or the 600 days, although people turning animals off earlier, maybe into the Vila market, may be focusing more on the 200-day weight. So the three different EBVs are available, allowing you, I guess, to target your selection and your genetics to a particular age point. But with these EBVs, they are very highly correlated, so while there might be some slight differences, generally animals rank fairly similar in their growth genetics to 200, 400 and 600 days of age. So they're the three weight EBV, or post-birth, I guess, growth EBVs. They're the traditional EBVs which have been around for quite some time, so most of you will be fairly familiar with those. They're obviously the original EBVs which were first produced by Breedplan. The next EBV, the mature cow weight EBV, just basically takes that the 2, 4 and 600 days, but out to differences in the live weight of animals at maturity, or expressed in this case at differences between cows in live weight at 5 years of age. Again, it's expressed in kilograms, with the higher EBVs being associated with the heavier mature cow weights. I guess when you're looking at your selection, it will really depend whether we're saying higher is more favourable or lower is more favourable. Really depend on your production system and some other factors about the kind of market that you're producing for. If feed is fairly cheap for you, so in your production system feed isn't a high cost, then higher mature cow weights, you may be able to get the benefit of an extra kind of sale price from heavier cows at not much extra cost. However, if your feed cost is quite high, and most of the modelling in Southern Australia is this way, particularly for Southern Australian production systems, then more moderate mature cows, even though they've got a higher sale price, have lower feed requirements on an ongoing maintenance point of view, and therefore come out to be most economical to run. So again, in this case, what size of mature cow, or whether higher or lower EBVs are more favourable when you're targeting your selection, will really depend on your production system. I guess one of the concerns which has been raised recently in the south is this link between higher mature cow weight, particularly with leaner animals, leaner cows, maybe higher milking cows, and having a negative impact on fertility. So there are some very important trait relationships there that you need to weigh up when you're looking at your level of mature cow weight that you're going to target. The last weight EBV which we're going to look at tonight is the milk EBV. So the milk EBV, you may question why this is in the weights presentation, but effectively if you look at what the EBV is describing, it's giving us differences in calf weight at 200 days of age that are due to the maternal effect, which is generally the different milk amounts of milk of the mother. So it's actually expressed not in litres of milk or anything like that, but in actual kilograms of weaning weight of calf, with the higher milk EBVs being associated with increased weight or weaning weight of the calves due to the extra maternal contribution of the mother, or differences in the maternal contribution of the mother. So in the case of sires, obviously the milk EBV is going to be looking at differences in the maternal contribution of their daughters to their particular calves. So that's the 5 different weight EBVs which we're going to discuss tonight. Obviously a fairly brief overview of them, but they're all just relating to differences in the weight of animals at a different point in the different age of the animal, I guess. So with that, Philip, I might pass back over to you to look at the first lot of questions that have come in.
Right, thanks Andrew. Got a couple of questions there. The first one is asking, if you submit a 200-day weight and there's a heavy calf for its age and no birth weight was submitted, would this then give that calf a large birth weight even though he may have been a small calf when born? I guess the simple answer to that is if that higher 200-day weight relative to his contemporaries that he's compared with will relate to a higher birth weight, basically because there's the correlation between those weight traits, and in general terms, the higher the 200, 400 and 600 day weights, the correlation back to a higher birth weight. I guess that just highlights the need to really record all those traits so that we can get a better picture of what the growth pattern of that animal is, and try and identify those genetics that can still give us high growth but lower birth weights. Would you like to add anything to that, Andrew?
No, I think you've covered that fairly well, Philip. I mean, obviously the importance here is that if you, as you say, if there's no birth weight that has been recorded, then the later weight information, which we'll talk about in a second, will certainly feed into that animal's birth weight EBVs. And if there's no birth weight that's been recorded to show that animal might not follow the standard relationships, then that birth weight EBV will increase.
Okay, the next question is how much of the animal in question's weight inputs into the EBV. It certainly has a significant input. I think we've discussed earlier in some earlier presentations about Breedplan looks at all the information that's available for the animal. So we look at the pedigree, the animal itself, and also any information we have on its own progeny, and also looks at correlation with traits which we've just been talking about in terms of those traits that are correlated in terms of weight and birth weights and those sort of things. So yes, it does have a big impact, and goes in conjunction with other information that we have available about that animal. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that one, Andrew?
Yeah, I'll just say it's a very good question, and unfortunately there's no simple answer. Really, how much of that EBV that you're seeing at 200, 400, 600 days is due to the animal's own performance versus, say, the information through the pedigree or any progeny will really depend on the relative usefulness of the different bits of information, and how effectively Breedplan can use that. So if, for instance, if Breedplan can't use the animal's own weight very effectively, then it may rely more on the pedigree information. Vice versa, if it can use its own weight very effectively, then it will predominantly use that in the calculation of the EBV versus the pedigree. So there's no real simple answer to that one.
Okay, the next question is there just asking, are you saying that you don't need the birth weight? That's right. Breedplan can calculate a birth weight based on post-birth weights. Through that correlation, but certainly if we want to try and describe the birth weight of the animal and subsequent growth, we'd prefer to have that information, the birth weight information, to get a better picture of that animal. That's probably a simplified answer, but is there anything you'd like to add to that, Andrew?
I'll just say that when you're looking at all this breed plan recording, you just need to record the traits which are important to you and your clients. So if birth weight and calving is important to you, as well as the later traits, then certainly we'd be recommending you record all that information.
Right, thanks, Andrew. Probably the last question, the other question there about the age ranges, but we'll cover that later. Another question, if calves are supplementary fed, does this adversely affect EBVs as compared to others in your society? No, the way the EBVs are calculated is looking at animals that have the same opportunity to perform. So it compares the performance of that individual animal against the average of its contemporaries, or those animals that have had the same opportunity to perform, and generates an EBV based on that information. Again, a fairly simplified answer, but given our time constraints, I suppose it's a little bit difficult to go into too much detail. But did you want to add anything to that one, Andrew?
No, Philip. I'll cover some of that in the next little session, so we'll hold the discussion over till then.
Righto. Okay. Well, I think we'll move on. Andrew, there's no other questions for the moment.
Okay. Thank you, Philip, and thank you for those questions. Some good discussion there. Okay, so what we will now focus more on is, if you're interested in having these EBVs, and some of our discussion we did touch on it there, what information do you need to record? So if you're interested in the first trait, having a 200-day growth EBVs, you're interested in using those in your selection, what information do you need to record? You need to weigh your animals at around 200 days of age. Now, it doesn't mean that you need to get every individual animal in when they're exactly 200 days. Just basically taking your mob of calves and weighing them when their average age is around 200 days of age, or 6 to 7 months. Hopefully that'll be tied in with some normal management practices, so whether that be marking or more likely weaning, then you just take a weight on that whole mob of calves on the one day and send that into Breedplan. Now what Breedplan can do is, as long as the calves are anywhere between 80 to 300 days, then it will adjust them to 200 days and use that in the calculation of the EBV. So you certainly don't need to record every animal on the same day. Anywhere between that 80 to 300 days will be used in the calculation of the 200-day EBV. We had a question, I think, do the animals have to be weighed within a certain number of days of the 2, 4 and 600-day targets? The answer is, I guess, yes at the outside. They do need to be weighed in that 80 to 300-day age range in the case of the 200-day weight. The further away, I guess the negative impact is that if they were all, say, at 280 days of age, then how they rank on that day is how Breedplan will consider that they did rank at 200 days. And so if you've had significant re-ranking of animals, then you may get slightly misleading information from from those weights that you take. So the recommendation would be to try and take them as close as possible to that 200 days, but obviously you've got a bit of flexibility around that. Now, importantly, Breedplan can accept 2 different weights in that age range. So generally, the recommendation will be just to record one 200-day weight, but you do have the ability to record 2 weights, and we might discuss later in this presentation some of the reasons why you may consider that. And in terms of submitting this information, then you send this to Breedplan. So a lot of the information we talked about last week relating to the birth traits, you're submitting to your breed society. In the case of the weight information, then you would send this into Breedplan, and towards the end of this presentation we'll just readdress some of the methods that are available to assist you with that. If we move to the next EBV, the 400-day weight EBV, what information you need to record. This time it's just a matter of taking the weights of your calves when they're around 400 days of age, so as yearlings. As with your 200-day weight, you do have a bit of an age range, so anywhere from 301 to 500 days will be used in the calculation of the 400-day weight. Again, you have the ability to put in 2 weights. again, the recommendation at a minimum would just be to do one. In some situations it might be optimal to do 2 weights in that age range, but in most circumstances just one will be adequate. Again, you send that information directly into Breedplan. The 600-day weight, so similar kind of story. So we take a weight of calves when they're around 600 days. So this just a different age point. Again, an age range, so 501 to 900 days, and Breedplan can accept 2 weights in that particular age range. Now there are some issues in here to do with heifers, so we'll discuss those in a bit more detail, but obviously if your heifers have calved, then we wouldn't want you to be sending in the weights of those as 600-day weights. As soon as they've calved, then really they fall into the mature cow weight range and trying to submit the performance more related to that trait than the 600-day weights, because you'll get some variation in how they handle calving. Again, with 600-day weight, you submit that information to Breedplan. The mature cow weight EBV, what information goes into that? If you're interested in your mature cow weight, having mature cow weight EBVs available on your animals, then you really just need to weigh your cows when you take the 200-day weights on the calves. So we're saying there a weight of the cow at weaning. That's not strictly correct. It really just has to be recorded, a weight on that cow, within 2 weeks of the calf's 200-day weight. So Breedplan, if it's got a mature cow weight, it'll look to see whether that's what it considers a valid weight. It'll look to see whether it's got a calf, and that calf's got a 200-day weight, and that 200-day weight has been taken within 2 weeks of when that mature cow weight's been recorded. So you need to do it when you're doing the 200-day weights, and you do it each year. So up to 4 measurements will be analysed within the Breedplan analysis on each particular cow. So that is, I guess, if you're calving at 2 years of age, its weight at 2 years, when you're taking 200-day weight as a 2-year-old, as a 3-year-old, as a 4-year-old, and a 5-year-old. Now, there's no need for you to go through and try and work out whether you've hit that 4-weight maximum or anything like that. Breedplan will work out that whether it's 1 to 4 weights, kind of, or more than 4 weights for you, and you won't be charged if it's the 5th weight and so forth, you know, and onwards. So really, what the simple thing is, if you're after mature cow weights, just weigh all your cows when you're taking the 200-day weights of the calves and send that information into Breedplan. And there are some considerations there that we need to make, which we'll talk about in a second. In terms of milk, you certainly don't need to go out and milk your cows every morning or anything like that. Breedplan will use the 200-day weights which have been submitted on the calves to calculate those milk EBVs. So it'll petition the part of the calf weight that's due to milk and that's due to size, due to the growth genetics, and calculate those EBVs accordingly. So if you're interested in the milk EBV, all you need to do is record your 200-day weights, exactly the same as the information you're recording for your 200-day growth EBVs. So that's just an overview, I guess, of the type of information you need to record. We just need to touch now on some of the considerations you need to make when you're recording that information to ensure that you get good quality information, and some of the questions which have been coming in, hopefully this will address some of those. So the first thing, I suppose, when you're recording your weights is important to note is that you need to use the appropriate equipment. So you need to use the appropriate scales, and when you're using those scales, ensure that they're set to weigh to the nearest kilogram. So some of the scales you'll see, obviously you can set where they weigh the nearest 10 kilograms, nearest 5 kilograms or whatever. You would need to set those so you're recording to the nearest kilogram, but no more than that. Some of them go down to half a kilogram, but just to the nearest kilogram is close enough. But it's important to make sure you're using the appropriate scales and that they're set up and zeroed correctly, and you're monitoring them as you go along to make sure you're not getting any bias in the weight of animals. The second point is you need to make sure that you record information on all the calves. So just going through and weighing the top ones or something like that will not do anything for your EBVs. You'll actually disadvantage those top calves, and you won't get any information on the rest of your calves. So it's a matter of going through, recording all the calves that you have registered with your society or recorded with your society, and making sure you're taking those measurements all on the same day. So Breedplan is only going to use the performance information, and if it's all been recorded on the same day, if it's all recorded on different days, then it doesn't make direct comparison of that information and you don't get any benefit from the Breedplan side of it. So recording all the calves and all on the same day is very important. Weighing the calf, I guess in terms of, I'll just go back one other point with that on that same day. I guess if you're taking, say, 200-day weights and you might be weaning over a week, then there are some considerations there to make. If obviously you do take the weight on the day you wean them, then you will be splitting things up. So you want to try and change your management so that you can actually take the weight all on the same day if that's possible. Again, just leaving them in the yards and then, or weaning them and then getting them all in at the conclusion of weaning to weigh them may have some bias as well between those calves which were weaned very early compared to those ones weaned at the end. So yes, if you've got any doubts along those lines, then please contact either the people at Breedplan or your SBTS and TBTS consultants to discuss the issues there. The third consideration you've got is to weigh the calves when they're in as large a group as possible. So obviously the more calves that are weighed on the same day, the more effectively Breedplan can use the performance information in the calculation of the EBVs for those calves. So as Philip touched on when answering the question previously, the way Breedplan will use these weights is to compare them directly to other calves which have all been run under the same conditions. So the more calves that it can compare those weights to, the better the accuracy of the EBVs that you're going to get. Some of the issues here, I guess, is if you've got to split animals for management reasons, then ideally you get a weight on those animals before you split them. So the obvious one is probably castrating your steers. So if you can hold off to make sure you've got a 200-day weight on all your male calves when they're all intact prior to castration, then that way you'll get the largest group possible. If you're castrating your animals well before 200 days, which most of you probably will be, then obviously you do have the ability to take those weights down to 80 days of age. So taking an early weight at marking on your male calves will get you the best possible information there. The downside, I suppose, if you wait till after those calves have been split, is obviously we can only compare the bull calf weights with the bull calves and the steers with the steers, and there's no direct comparison then between the steers and the bull calves. So there are some issues there as well that you can consider with your management to make sure you're getting more bang for your buck from your performance recording. The fourth point, and a very, very important point, is you need to make sure you're recording management groups with these weights on these calves to identify any differences in the treatment of those animals which may have resulted in differences in their weights. And so we've got some questions here about if calves are supplementary fed, does it adversely affect the EBVs? The important thing is that you record a management group to identify that group of calves have been supplementary fed versus maybe another group of calves which have been weighed on that day that haven't been supplementary fed. You are effectively, by recording your management group, acting as the eyes for the Breedplan analysis and ensuring that it is grouping these animals into the right groups and only directly comparing the weights with other calves that have had the same treatment or same opportunity to perform. If we're not getting or not recording management groups correctly, then Breedplan will incorrectly compare groups of animals which have been managed differently, and then you'll get biased and incorrect EBVs. I guess the same thing comes out here. We've got a question relating to twins and how that may affect the EBVs. The twin performance from the twin calves won't be directly compared with the other single calves, so you need that will be taken account of. The important thing with twins, though, is if you've got twin calves that have been raised as twins versus other twin calves which may have been raised as singles, so you might have fostered a calf onto another cow, or one of the twins may have died, then you need to clearly differentiate or management group those calves that are twins that have been raised as singles versus those twins which have been raised as twins. It also does raise the next point, I guess, as to what about management groups for mature cow weights. And if a cow, for instance, is raising twins versus a single calf, how does that affect her mature cow weight EBV? In that case, you do need to actually management group the mature cow weight of the cow that's raising the twins into a separate management group from the calf which is raising a single calf. So you need to act as the eyes for the Breedplan analysis. There are some subtle differences here with mature cow weights and what it does with management groups. If there are no management groups recorded, then it will actually use the management groups which have been submitted with the 200-day weights of those calves to when it's grouping up the mature cow weights. So I would generally recommend that when you're submitting in your mature cow weights, you also put in management groups to identify any differences in the management of those cows which might have affected their mature cow weight, rather than just leaving it up to the 200-day weights of the calves. The other thing about the management groups for mature cows is you not only need to probably management group them for any differences in their treatment in this particular year, but if there's been differences in the previous year's management which is still having an impact on their weight, then you need to take account of that. And in some scenarios, an example of that will be cows which have maybe missed a calf, so they're coming through, they didn't wean a calf last year, and they're a lot heavier than maybe a cow which did wean a calf the year previously, etc. You need to try and take account of that when you're doing your mature cow weights. And obviously you don't want to take account of every little possible effect which could have occurred. Recording too many management groups and splitting the animals up too much can be just as much of a problem as not submitting enough management groups. So if you've got any question there about management grouping, it's a really important part of your performance recording, so please contact Breedplan and discuss it prior to getting into any of your performance recording. The other consideration we've got now is if you're early weaning, whether you want to consider taking an early 200-day weight. As I touched on before, we can analyse up to 2 weights in each age range, either be that 2, 4 or 600 days. Probably the case where I would recommend that you take 2 weights in an age range is if you are early weaning, particularly if you're early weaning and then not taking the 200-day weights till around 200 days. You might have had quite significant re-ranking of animals since actual physical weaning took place, and that may have an impact on your actual milk EBVs. So the milk EBVs you're getting may not necessarily reflect the actual different maternal contribution that the mothers are making. So making sure in that case I would take an early 200-day weight around weaning, so you're getting good information for your milk EBVs. There may be a later weight, maybe just after 200 days, to get an indication for that 200-day growth EBV would be my recommendation there. I guess the other case where you may consider an early weight is if you're not early weaning but you're suspecting that a significant kind of proportion of cows are actually weaning their calves naturally prior to weaning. In some breeds that's been shown up to be a bit of a problem. Then you may take an early weight just to make sure you're getting the best possible information for your milk EBVs. In terms of 600-day weight, you do need to consider whether, if you're calving down at 2 years of age, the pregnancy status of those heifers. So Breedplan's recommendation is that you don't submit weights for 600 days once the animal is 3 to 4 months in calf. Now, if my maths are correct, if you're calving at 2 years of age, that's around 730 days. If you come back to 600 days, or 130 days previously, about roughly speaking 4 months. So those females might be 5 months in calf when they're around 600 days. So the option there may be to record an earlier weight, so maybe when your heifers are around 550, 60 type of age, take the weights then. That way you won't get significant variation in the weights that are due to different stages of pregnancy. Obviously, the more spread out you're calving, then the more of an issue that becomes. If you're running a fairly tight AI program, you've preg tested, then and your management group those that are in calf versus those that are pregnant or in calf, then you can wait a bit later in the past that 4 to 5 months. The last point there I think I've got for the considerations is the weighing of these animals at 2, 4 and 600 days ideally is not an extra job or a significant amount of extra work. What you would be trying to do is make the recording of this information part of just your normal management practices, so that when they're coming through the yards, you take this weight information. So you try and coordinate it. Maybe if you're scanning, we start talking about the carcass traits next week, you take your 600-day weights or your 400-day weights at that time. Likewise, you take, maybe when you're doing your scrotal measurements, you might take your 400-day weights at the same time. Also trying to tie up, say, your 200 days when you're weaning, or your 400-day weights when they're coming through as yearlings, will make your Breedplan recording least of a hassle as what it possibly can be. So with that, Philip, we covered a fair bit of information there. I might pass back to you for any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. No, there's no other questions. There's only one question came in about the effect of twins on a mature cow weight, EBVs, and you've covered that adequately in your presentations. So no further questions at this stage. I think we can probably move on. Okay,
thanks, Philip. So the last thing that we need to cover here is how do you submit this information to Breedplan. So for those that were in the first webinar, we did cover it there, but we'll just go back for some of you who may have missed that one. You've obviously got 4 different options available to you. So you can either submit it on paper. There are some forms available which the Breedplan office will send out to you. There's also a number of compatible herd recording computer programs, so Herdmaster, Stockbook and CattleLink, 3 that spring to mind. Obviously they're all set up to try and make your recording as easy as possible. So if you've got the full bells and whistles there, you'll be able to use your scales, record that information, feed that directly into your Herdmaster or your Stockbook program, and then it's just a matter of extracting it out of that program and sending it via email to Breedplan. So it should all be set up there to do it electronically. We don't actually have to enter any of this information in. Otherwise, if you're not set up with your electronic scales to feed directly into your program, then you'll just be entering those weights in and emailing them off. There's also a Microsoft Excel template, so that's available from the Breedplan website. And for those of you familiar with the Internet Solutions facilities, so the facilities which allow you to search for a range of animal and EBV type of details, there's also a secure member login where you log in and you can submit both your registrations and your performance information through there. So there's 4 different ways of doing it, all designed to be flexible to fit in and have one that's as easy for you as possible. I guess the point about this that I would make is my recommendation would be to you that you actually submit this performance information when you record it. So take your 200-day weights, send that in, then Breedplan will send you back some updated information, take your 400-day weights and send it in, and so forth for 600 days. If you wait all just for once a year and those type of things, then it can become quite a big job and can be hard to try and collate all that information, whereas if you're doing it at the time, it can be easier for you. So in summary, I guess, of the information we need to record, basically you need to record a weight on all the animals that are recorded with your breed society and present within your herd at 200, 400 and 600 days. When you take for your mature cow weight, take the mature weights on your calves. When you're taking the 200-day weights of the calves, make sure though that you're taking care to collect good quality performance information. That involves things about making sure you're submitting adequate management groups, maintaining group sizes, etc. That I can't stress that point enough, that the quality of the information that you send in is really the major factor in the quality of the EBVs that you get back and how useful they are for your genetic improvement. So when you're getting set up, I'd really recommend you take the time to talk to someone at either Breedplan or SPTS or TBTS to get it all clear in your head, so you make sure you're doing the best possible job that you can. And I've made that last point to my recommendation would be that you submit it to Breedplan at the time of collection. So that summarises, I guess, what my major points were about the weight EBVs and what information to record. I'll now pass back to Philip to see if we've got any further questions and to sum up.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Just one question there that we have come in, just in relation to the birth weight EBVs. If the sire and the dam of the calf have birth weight EBVs, but you haven't weighed the calf at birth, will the calf get a mid-parent EBV? Depends the number of considerations there. If there's a post-birth weight weight on the calf itself, then there will be a correlation back to that to provide a birth weight. And it also depends on the accuracy of the EBVs, the birth weight EBVs of the sire and the dam, as there are limits to reportability in terms of accuracy on those EBVs. So yeah, depending on accuracy and depending on subsequent post-birth weight information, there will be a EBV for birth weight. Did you want to add anything to that one, Andrew?
No, I think that covers it, Philip.
Yep. We've got quite a few questions coming in now. One there, but do you take into account the mother's EBVs when you have an embryo transfer calf, or a calf generated from embryo transfer? Yes, we do. That is certainly looked at, and we need to know the recipient dam information as well to be able to get a better idea of the genetic merit of that calf. I guess that's a simple answer. If you need to find out more about that, I'd suggest probably ringing us directly to talk you through that one. Do you want to add anything to that one, Andrew?
Yeah, I'll just say when it's looking at the EBVs for the embryo transfer calves, it does take into account both the genetic dam plus the recipient dam. Obviously not the genetics from the recipient dam, but the maternal contribution that she makes. So when it's looking at the mid-parent starting value, we look at the genetic dam and the genetic sire as the starting value. But then when it's looking at the performance of the embryo transfer calf, it will try and take account of any differences in the maternal contribution from the recipient dam. So all that information is used in the calculation of that.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. I guess there's a couple of questions there about herd recording programs to assist in recording this information, submission through to Breedplan. Yes, there are some, or a number of different herd recording software available to assist you with that. I guess, yeah, unfortunately with the limited time, we probably can't go into too much detail about what are available, but certainly the main ones are available through Saltbush, the Herdmaster program, and also Practical Systems, the Stockbook herd recording program. There are others available, and it's probably best that you contact us directly to discuss that in more detail. Did you want to add anything to that, Andrew?
Yeah, I will just add, Philip, I think my understanding is the Kindinan group did do a bit of a work comparing those different programs a few years ago. So there is some information there. I'm not quite sure where you'd access it from. But my recommendation to you would be you can get a free trial of the major ones. So you can get it at no cost, certainly with the Herdmaster. I think there might be a small cost for mailing from Stockbook. So I'd get the trial version sent out, have a look, load on your computer, have a look at it, and find out which one works best for you. Those two programs, the Herdmaster and Stockbook, certainly do fairly similar things, and it just becomes a matter of finding which one works best for your operation.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. I guess the last question we have there is how old can historical data be of an animal that is over 3 years of age? But I guess basically we can accept information, historical data, on a number of different traits. I guess that information then goes in and certainly provides additional information to strengthen the analysis of the relatives of that animal. So yeah, it's certainly useful information. In terms of the animal itself, I guess it needs to be assessed as the benefit of having that information, because depending on if that animal is still around or not, but certainly in terms of its descendants, that can be very useful information. Don't know if you want to add anything to that, Andrew?
No, I think we're interpreting the question correctly. Certainly there's no time frame. If you've taken a weight on an animal 20 years ago, you can send that information in and that'll go into the Breedplan analysis and contribute to the EBVs of all its relatives. I think that's how I'm interpreting the question, so certainly there's no time frame on that.
Okay, I've got one last question that came in relation to mature cow weight. Did you say 5 years of age at calving? Basically, there is a limit, depends on the Bos Taurus breeds and the Bos Indicus breeds, but basically, as long as you're submitting that mature cow weight before the first mature cow weight before 6 years of age, that will be used in the analysis. It's probably easy just to submit mature cow weights, and Breedplan analysis will determine whether that information can be used. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that one, Andrew?
Yeah, I wouldn't, in terms of the mature cow weight, I did say it was expressed as differences in the weight of cows at 5 years of age. I guess I wouldn't get too hung up about that 5 years of age. That's just the end point that the EBV is reported as. It's really just differences in the weight of cows at maturity.
Okay, yeah, we'll have to finish up. There's just one last question in relation to historical data about how that information will be entered. Basically, it's just a matter of provided that animal is recorded with the society, submitting that information through the Breedplan would enable that information to be put onto the database, and that would then assist in the analysis of relations to that animal. I think we'll probably finish up there, Andrew.
Yes.
Anything else to add?
No, I've got nothing to add other than thank you people for their attendance and their questions, and I'll leave it up to you to sum up the night.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. Just before we close, just a couple of other housekeeping issues. That webinar material, webinar that we've had today, as well as the two that we've already run, will be available for download. One of the questions was where can we download that information. It can certainly be downloaded off the TBTS and SBTS websites, the same place that you registered for this webinar. So that is available for download. If you're having difficulties downloading that information, please contact us, and we can look at other options for getting that information to you. There will be some written material, resource material sent out to you relative to tonight's topic, so you can look into more detail of some of these topics that we've covered. Just a reminder, you still need to register for remaining upcoming webinars, as you have done for this webinar and previous webinars. If you feel that some of your answers haven't been answered adequately tonight, please don't hesitate to contact us for further information on those questions and to find out more about performance recording the weight traits. In front of you now, you should have some contact details for the relative breeds. So look at your breed society and the technical person to contact in relation to that. Apart from myself and Andrew, there's Christian Duff looking after Shorthorn Charolais, Red Angus Simmental, Ashley Austin, Blondie Aquitaine Devon, Red Pole Solers in South Devon, Peter Parnell for Angus, Alex McDonald for Limousin, and Michael Beattie for Wagyu. That concludes our presentation tonight. Thank you all for your attendance, and hope to see you next week at the same time. Good night for now.